welcome to the Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast. For a second, I almost did the upping the ante. Um, no, this is the Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast, and I am your co-host, Sabrina.
And I'm Cade.
And we are here to talk to you about all things autistic and kinky and asexual and all the rest of it. Everything A related, apparently, Jesus. And just a reminder and a disclaimer, this is not therapy. It's not therapeutic advice. It's what we might do if we were in your position and our thoughts on the situation, though we are both therapists. And we're here to answer your questions today, especially for other folks like us who are autistic therapists. This episode is all focused on, like kind of all the weird magical shit that happens when you're an autistic therapist.
Yeah, like how do we balance it all? What do we do? Where do we find community? All these types of questions we get pretty frequently. So if you are an autistic therapist or if you're thinking about becoming a therapist, you might want to listen in.
For a second, I did think you were going to say if you're thinking about becoming autistic, and I was like, I love this for you. This magical world. Although if you're thinking about getting assessed, this movie still also has some things for you. Or
truly,
if you're worried to get assessed because you can't be both. Inaccurate.
I wish I had known early on in my career. It would have not just helped me, but so many clients where I was like, I guess they just have anxiety like I do. Okay, we'll look at it through the anxiety lens.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really grateful to, I've known my whole career.
Nice.
It was mostly just in school that I didn't. So yeah, it's interesting. So our first question is about later in life diagnosis. So our first question is, I'm a later in life diagnosed autistic therapist. I've always felt like it's hard to connect with my colleagues and peers, especially now that I realize I'm not holistic like they are. Where do you go to meet other autistic therapists? And just for anyone listening who might not know, holistic is the other side of the autistic coin, right? So you are either autistic or you are allistic. That's
so some people will they'll say non-autistic, so allistic, non-autistic. Yeah. Some people pronounce it, is it what's the other way?
Allistic, allistic, maybe?
Something like that. Yeah.
I've only ever heard it pronounced allistic.
Yeah. I don't know. So however you pronounce it, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Exactly.
This is an interesting one because I think inherently in some ways I have gravitated towards other autistic colleagues, although I was the first one to know I was autistic and kind of tumbled everybody else's domino path, like a interesting Rube Goldberg machine where suddenly everyone figures it out.
I love the imagery of you as a little marble just rolling down and hitting people, and then we go, oh my god, I'm autistic. Oh my god, I'm autistic.
Yep.
I love that.
That's what it felt like. Although some, of course, were like, no, absolutely not, which is their journey to walk to figure out for themselves. Maybe I'm off base. But I think inherently in our field, you will find some other autistic therapists, knowingly or unknowingly, just by being yourself. And the more that you are yourself, the more they're going to be drawn to interact with you, especially if your sensory profiles line up pretty well and your communication style lines up pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, one of my best friends, actually, her wife is sitting upstairs in my living room right now with my partner, was just an intern of mine at a job that I worked. And once the internship was over, we decided to keep in touch and start hanging out. And and a lot of that was the same, we communicate well, and we both like to craft, and we both like to do this kind of thing, and we have a similar sense of humor, those kind of things. And so we just kept kind of connecting in a way that I didn't with the other coworkers. And lo and behold, I did accidentally, I was like, well, yeah, how all of us are autistic, with them, with her and her wife. And her wife was like, I'm so sorry to have to break it to you, but I am just not autistic. And I was like, oh yeah, no, totally not, for sure. Mm-hmm, yep. And now absolutely knows and claims that identity.
If it weren't for an autistic therapist lumping me in with other autistic folks, I also would not have figured it out. So I know that is kind of a taboo. Some people don't appreciate that, but I found it very, very helpful, and it was all I needed to deep dive on autism and figure it out.
The accidental peer review,
Yeah.
like I don't think pushing it is the goal. And I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, if they were like, no, I'm not, I wouldn't be like, and they were like, no, I'm not. And I was like, okay. I don't think that you have to sit there and go like, yes, you are.
Right.
But yeah, I think like if you happen to, it's hard because I also think that like you're just looking for people who match well with you, whether they're
Yeah.
autistic or holistic, whether they're also anxious, whether they're also depressed, whether they're also like whatever else they have going on. I think that like we get really sucked into the idea of the double empathy problem, meaning that we can only make friends with other autistic people. That has not been my experience. Like I do have some holistic friends. I know friend of the podcast, Patrick Cassell, and Jen, his business partner, like just released an episode not long ago about like a like that neurodiverse business partnership, right? Where like Jen describes herself as being like the most holistic that you could ever holistic. And okay, Patrick is ADHD, like hardcore. And so like they talked about how that works out for them. And so like I don't think it's impossible. I do think that like instead of trying to go out and specifically meet other autistic people, go out and try to meet people who work well with you, and the likelihood that they'll be autistic is higher.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the folks that you're thinking are not autistic may very well be. We talk a little sometimes about neurotypical and how that's not actually a neurotype. No one has the exact norm brain, or if there is, like
Well, a
statistically, that's
brain
like,
is not what is normed on, right? It's a
yes,
system, and that like neurotypical is an identity, like a socio-political identity that is like, oh,
based on
they're
standards.
right, like they're close to and have access to in a very easy way, like neuronormative standards, right? And so like I have some ways that I am closer to neuronormativity and closer, and some ways that I'm like further away from it. We all do, but that like a neurotypical person would be a person who like has very easy, consistent access to like neuronormative standards. And so they exist, but like it's not a, oh, your brain is neurotypical.
Yeah. And so if you have maybe a colleague who is exerting extra energy to mask, like they may be autistic and say they are neurotypical because that's where they're at in their journey, or that's where they're at in relation to their privilege and what, or internalized ableism, or who knows what, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you may know some folks. If you're really like, I truly do not think I do, I have found the most autistic therapists online in Facebook groups in my local-ish areas, my state areas, and then some of the like global groups like Sabrina's.
Shocked Pikachu face. That's not the name of the group. That's just how shocked I am about the fact that we find autistic people online. Yeah, I also was gonna say, because I mean that's how we met.
Yeah.
Was by extension of the group that I help run, which is Therapists Supporting Neurodiversity. And
Over on
yeah,
Facebook. Yeah.
the one on Facebook. Yeah, like so I help run that group. I met one of my other really close friends, one of our other really close friends, Jess, through running that group. And then Jess invited me to help on like a leadership team of Autistic Clinical Insights, which was a big symposium that happened a few months back. And you were also on that like leadership team. So that's how I met you. And then I think I was like, so a little starstruck. I was like, ooh, damn, like this bitch knows what the fuck they're talking about. Okay, noted. And then one day you asked if I could like stay on after a meeting for a little while. Oh, was it ACI? Was it Financial Besties? I don't remember. It was about ACI stuff though.
But they were both from that group, like both
yeah.
things, the Financial Besties group and the ACI like volunteer team both stemmed out of that group.
It did. Yeah, exactly. Like, so Financial Besties is another group that Jess started. She like posted in the Facebook group and was like, "Hey, money's hard. Anyone else want to talk about it for a while?" And Kate and I and a bunch of our other now quite close friends like talked about, like, all responded to that, and then like ended up in a group chat and a thread, and now we meet every other Sunday for about 2 hours and talk about like, what do I do with
Right.
this weird credit card debt, or how are people paying their student loans, or how do I market. But we also have just like a group chat that like um we'll throw like, hey, I'm working on this thing, can people give me feedback for the logo for this, or for, whatever. And um this podcast was birthed out of that space. And so yeah, I think that there's a lot of fertile ground there, but you do have to be willing to engage, which is the scary part.
I think the consistently showing up piece is probably the biggest factor there. Even if you're not always like feeling your best, just showing up and participating when you can and letting people know that you're there can really build those bonds.
Yep. And then if you're like noticing, I won't get into what you had asked me to talk about, but I think you had maybe like seen the way I engage or like something and kind of decided like, okay, this is the person whose opinion I want on this like
Yeah.
matter. And also this is the person who has this overlap with like ACI, and had asked me to stay over to talk about something with ACI. And we ended up talking for like 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. And that was really enjoyable. And like after that, we just kind of started talking more to the side. I think we've talked every single day.
Pretty
Since
much, or at
then.
least like a little check-in. Yeah,
Yeah,
like a little something.
exactly. And so yeah, I think that there's something really important to consistency. There's something really important about like showing up as much as you can and letting people know when you can't. So like another one of our friends from Financial Besties, who some folks might know because she's really prolific in the ADHD scene, is like Bobby Joe. She and I meet like as often as we can on Fridays
Oh,
for an hour just to like talk about like, hey, a little bit of body doubling, a little bit of accountability. Like, what's up? How are we doing? You talked about this thing last time. How is that going now? Like some verbal processing partnership. And so like, yeah, there's just kind of like little, where are you showing up? How are you showing up? Are you being as authentically yourself as you can? And then are you reaching out extra to people who like you want to connect with more?
yeah. And it doesn't have to be a ton. Many of us autistic folks tend to build friendships quickly if we are values aligned and have at least a few similar interests. And everything you're hearing Sabrina and I talk about, like, for us, work does kind of count as a special interest. So
Mhm.
we're not like, on the weekends, work is over and we don't even want to think about it. If you are someone like that, then maybe it's worth posting in a group and being like, hey, looking for other autistic therapists who are interested in bird watching or
Yeah.
Pokemon Go or whatever the other thing is, and building your own little group.
Yeah, especially like there's a Facebook group near me that started because people were like, "Hey, does anyone want a like therapist specific space that does not talk about therapy?" And
Nice.
like it's a social get together group only. That's the goal of it. And so like that exists near me. I'm not a big like I don't do a lot in that group just because I have a really hard time not talking about this stuff. Like you said, like it's one of my special interests. Um, but yeah, I do think that like if you can, putting yourself out there on Facebook, on Instagram, I've definitely like made friends on Instagram, like just commenting, like engaging actively in content that you enjoy. Like don't go in there and fucking hate comment. You're not going to connect with anyone that way. But like um talking about that kind of stuff on Discord, there's definitely some interesting like Discord servers. Um yeah, like
Yeah.
online is a great way to meet people.
Yeah, I think if you can't find them in person, online's a good option. If there's a local therapist group that you feel comfortable either posting with your name attached or anonymously and asking like, are there any other autistic therapists local to us? That can be a good way to do it. I
Mhm.
remember doing like a Pride event where I tried to gather some people to have a therapist at Pride booth, and the first
Ooh.
year we did it, I was talking to my autistic colleague, and we were just chatting about neurotype related stuff. And one of the other women turns around and she goes, did you say you're autistic? Me too. And it was like, oh, that's
Oh
cool
my
because she's been like in our community for a long time practicing and just doesn't like market herself that way. So we didn't know.
God. Yeah. I think that ends up being like a really important part is like kind of just publicly being yourself. And then like the people who get drawn to that will be drawn to it. And the people who don't
Yeah.
won't be, which is good. Like you don't want those people. And so maybe it's, hey, I'm planning to go and do some notes at the library, Friday at 5 and then get coffee. If anyone wants to join me, like, we can chit chat, do notes, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
Make little impromptu things can sometimes be effective, especially if you kind of like state that it's going to be like, hey, sensory friendly note session at the library, like, bring your fidget toys. That's going to attract certain people, even if you don't want to be super super out with your autism.
Yeah.
That might be nice coded language.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And yeah, any space you if you feel comfortable marketing yourself as autistic and using that language and putting that out there, whether it's for consultation or referrals for clients, you will find that people will reach out to you if they feel comfortable being openly autistic as well. Because I know a lot of folks who reach out to me for supervision. In their initial message, they say, I have seen that you are an autistic supervisor or
Mhm.
therapist, and I want to connect. So if you're not looking so much on a friend's level, but like a colleague, supervisee, supervisor type of thing, or consultant, that might be a great way to get it too, is by putting yourself out there and waiting to see who feels equally comfortable reaching out to you and saying that they are as well.
Yeah. And then also like networking events and listservs, like
Yeah.
people, especially now, like this is the time of year when call volume dries up. And also we have so much uncertainty that I think a lot of people are marketing themselves harder right now. See who's marketing themselves as that. And like, hey, want to have a virtual coffee?
Yeah.
I've done several virtual coffees with people just from like, hey, I saw how you were talking about this thing in this group and I really liked your stance on it. Want to have a virtual coffee? And it'll be like an hour. We set aside, we put on a Zoom link and we just like sit and chat. That feels really cool. That feels really nice and take some of the pressure off of like a big event.
Mhm.
But you can also go to, oh, hey, this place is having an open house. Let me go talk about how I see autistic clients and then am openly autistic, and maybe I'll meet other people who are too.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are all really good ideas. And I think too, yeah, the more open you are, the more you're out there being yourself, it's going to draw people to you. I know another tip, at least for the queer side of things, like not so much the autistic, but I'm sure you could swing it that way too. Uh, Locally, we had a therapist who tried to start up like an LGBTQIA plus consultant group where it was like, okay,
Ooh.
everybody show up and like staff some cases and give support, share resources. And that person was an ally, but when I showed up, like there were a handful of us who were actually part of the community, working with the community, and then a lot of allies that I would not have otherwise met if I didn't go. So
Mhm.
you could start like an autistic or ADHD or autistic, ADHD, and ADHD support group for staffing cases and things, whatever feels right to you and whatever you have the energy for.
Yeah. I'll say running a Facebook group sucks a lot in a lot of ways. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It takes a lot out of your soul. Starting one is even harder. Um, than running like one that's already established and big. But it's very, very worth it. Like if there isn't already an autistic therapist of XYZ locale, or even just like, autistic therapists working with XYZ population, whatever, um, build it.
Yeah.
People are looking for community all the time. Like, this is probably one of the most common things that I hear about from clients, from other therapists, from like people I consult with and train, and like just all the time we're hearing that like that's needed. And it's really hard because it is really, really hard to be the builder of the thing. If you happen to have those skills and that commitment to the thing, do it. If you have one other person in your life who you would be willing to do that with, do it with that person. That's part of why we made the podcast, is because we were like, hey, I can't really do this alone, but I'd love to like work with you to build something where people can have a space to come and like maybe meet each other in the comments, or like have a common thing that they're listening to and hearing, and be able to talk about with their community members. Like, I think that that's the kind of stuff that if you can figure out like, okay, what skills are needed for this and what skills do I have that line up with that, it's very worth putting in that effort.
It can be lonely to be an autistic therapist with no community. So if you've got the energy to pull something together, that could be so helpful for many people.
Yeah, especially like private practice, because I know a lot of autistic therapists end up in private practice for themselves for a lot of really valid reasons. And it's very isolating if you don't intentionally um, go out and make space for a community with others.
Kind of leads us into our next question. The next one we've got is, what sort of events can I find more autistic therapists at? I attended Autistic Clinical Insights in November and love the sense of community, connection, and understanding. Where can I get more of that?
Hey, Kate, as one of the core important leadership members who built Autistic Clinical Insights, tell us more about what that was.
So it was a wonderful, very full 3-day online symposium, primarily by autistic clinicians, for any clinician to attend to learn more about how to work with autistic clients. And we covered like the gamut of topics with that intersection with being autistic and ADHD. We had presentations on OCD, on race, on culture, on disordered eating care, neuroqueering therapy with teens, like all sorts of just great content. And everybody was given like an hour to do their thing, and it was beautiful. And we of course had Zoom and Zoom chats, and people were pretty active in there. But we also have a Discord server for folks who attended, and that was also very popular. So everybody was kind of resource sharing, info sharing, networking. It went really well. People enjoyed the social hours too. We had a social committee who put on 2 different events, and a lot of the feedback we've gotten is next time do more. So ACI should continue. You could keep an eye out for that. Head over to autistic.clinicalinsights.com, and I think there's a way to sign up for the mailing list.
Yeah. Yeah, I do just want to highlight that you worked really, really hard on that, and good job. Because I know that it went really well, and yeah, I was seeing people in the chat the whole time talking about like how much it meant to them to have so much like space for like autistic connection. And they like you worked really hard to build that. So good fucking job, friend.
Thank you, and thank you for your help with the groundwork on that. You know, there were some folks who really pitched in consistently for like a year and a half or so. I mean, it was a big project. None of
Yeah.
us really had done anything like that before, but now that we've done it, we're
Yeah.
hoping to continue to do it through, Radical Insights consulting, through My Curious Cryptid Learning, through NeuroPebble, through a bunch of other places, so that we can have more of that, where the non-autistic folks are just kind of decentered for
Mhm.
once, because
Yeah.
usually all the trainings are focused on them, and you have to like timidly raise your hand and say, well, what if I have an autistic client? What do I
Yeah,
do?
exactly. Yeah, I know. I think that a really important thing is like what sort of events is it like. I think that there are some, but I do think that like it tends to be actually kind of a closed community in a lot of ways, and not in a way like I see it in the Black community a lot too, is that like we tend to be pretty closed because people have done so much harm to us all the fucking time, everywhere. Oh my god, all the time. And I think that like I went to a retreat this past year that like um was kind of autism focused and like neurodivergent focused, quote unquote, more autism focused than neurodivergent focused, and it was like by invitation.
Oh yeah.
And so, like get
Yeah.
an invite, and that way that, and part of that is like that is how it stays safe. And so kind of one of the ways I think to find more events is to connect with more autistic people and figure out like what are they doing. Like I know there are a couple of different like virtual symposiums and even in person live events that I'll be speaking at next year. You know, I know that you do some, like,
Yeah.
Thrive is not autistic focused, but it's kink focused, and there's a huge overlap there, as we know.
Yeah, it's specifically BDSM and neurodivergence focused. So inherently, a lot of what we're talking about are autistic folks, but it's, I mean, yeah, they don't define neurodivergence just as ADHD and autism like a lot of other places do. So it's cool to see.
You mean they
Yeah.
define it accurately?
Yep, and
Yay!
that'll be in May, near the end of May 2026. So we will keep you all updated in episodes as we get closer, so that you'll have links, because most years it's either free or very low fee to register.
Mm-hmm. And it's got like a pro track and a everybody track, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I think it's about continuing to connect, and then through those connections, like, I learned about Thrive through you. I would not know about Thrive if it were not for you. There's another event called Sex Down South that I learned from somebody, right? And so, like, it's most of the things that I've learned about are not from a marketing strategy from a person, but from, oh, word of mouth. I've been here. This is a safe place. This is a thing I enjoyed. And I also am lucky enough that, like, my boss actually hosts a lot of, like, my boss and friend, because he's not going to listen to this, but if he did and he heard me just call him my boss, he would be like, I'm your friend, because he is. But Patrick Casale, he hosts a lot of events. I'm actually speaking at one in Maine in September of 26. That is Doubt Yourself, Do It Anyway. It's like his kind of, like, main quote, like, that's his little slogan. And you know, he and Jen host it every year. Last year it was in Scotland. That was my Scotland trip. And this year it'll be in Maine, and or 2025 it was in Scotland. 26 it'll be Maine. Time is not real. And I think that, like, that's really nice, because when things are led by autistic and ADHD people, it tends to be pretty autistic and ADHD, like, friendly. And that draws in other autistic and ADHD folks, because, like, it is really hard to have events that are not like sensory overwhelming, or really, really focused on, like, holistics, or you know, have
The
like a lot of
grueling
high social
schedules.
demands, rigid
Yeah.
schedules. Yeah, like, in Greece, one of the things that Patrick told everyone is, like, come to as many of the things as you want. Don't come to any of the things you don't want. Expect to see me at some things and expect to not see me at other things. Like, that we all have to be taking care of ourselves. And that's like an expectation of autistic events. So they're really important. And I think that, like, where you get more of it is by connecting.
Will that one be open, like our listeners could attend? Is there a way that they could get tickets to that if they want to go to Maine?
Yeah, for sure. Tickets are on sale now. We'll put a link in the show notes, because it's a big ugly link. A heads up that the link that we're gonna put in the show notes is an affiliate link. You don't pay any extra, but I get a little kickback. And all of the kickback that I'm getting from that will be going to my kitty Egg, and her medical care. So, but yeah, I think Empowered Entrepreneurs is the, like, or
Like an
no, Empowered
organization?
Escapes. I always get that wrong. Empowered Escapes is the business that they do that through. And they have a bunch of different, like, retreats and events and things. But Maine is absolutely open. It's summit style. So there's, like, events in the, like, or trainings in the morning, and then it's like free go explore Maine time, which I really enjoyed in Scotland. Like, we would, like, go. So it was Jess, who we were talking about earlier, our friend Pre, me, some other friends, like, all of us ended up in Scotland. And so we would, like, go to the trainings, the, like, talks in the morning, and then, like, just go explore Edinburgh in the, like, evenings and afternoons. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. And so that'll be the same vibe, which I'm really excited for.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, well, we'll be sure to put that in the show notes and any other links we can think of to events, because I know people are always looking for more, and there definitely are some. It's just there aren't as many as there are other types of events where autistic folks aren't as centered or as, like, considered in the planning.
Yeah, I also know Autism in Black has a conference, a virtual conference every year. Maybe they have an in-person one as well.
I think so, because
I think
usually the
so.
virtual is, or at least last year, the virtual was the or not recording, but like a live stream of them. So
Mhm.
you could see like right before the event started and then the actual presentation and then a little afterwards, and they cut the camera and you go to the next space for the next one. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, I think that it is hard, especially I think for those of us who do live at intersections. But I do think that that's the thing is like we exist everywhere. So like go to Black events if you're Black. There are autistic people there. Make yourself a little affinity group, right? Like go to fat events if you're fat. There are autistics there. Like make affinity spaces. Like I think that that can sometimes be really fun, and especially if you're thinking about like presenting at one of these places, go and present on autism. I bet
Yeah.
you the people who show up are going to be autistics. There's your people. You found
Yeah.
them, right? And so like yes, it is really nice to like specifically go to autistic events. I do think that like it's important to note that there are probably ways to connect and feel that with other people if you're willing to take the first step.
Yeah. And that's what we'll leave you with. I think on our bonus content, we're going to answer some questions around like how to stay on top of all the things a therapist has to stay on top of and what sort of accommodations exist and which ones we utilize. So if you're in the field or about to be in the field or considering it, definitely join us over there. That's on our Patreon at patreon.com/Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast. You can expect new episodes weekly on Tuesdays, and you can find me over at cryptidlearns.com or at cryptidlearns on most social media. And Sabrina's over at Radical Insights Consulting on Facebook or Instagram or radicalinsightsconsulting.com.
And make sure to check the show notes for this one because we are going to put a bunch of links and helpful stuff in there that's just like good to bookmark or save or take note of.
And if there's any autistic therapist related questions that we didn't answer or don't touch on in this or the bonus content, or you want us to go deeper, or you have any questions at all for us, you can visit neurokink.org/AUYS and you can send those over to us.